Good morning, everyone. My name is Nathan Birch. Today, I decided to make a little video for you guys. I realized that um, in class, we had a pretty good opportunity to write a bunch of code together. Um, and I feel like just 5 minutes of doing that really helped the in-class students. And I'm seeing a lot of similar questions coming from many students in my 3 online sections. So with that said, let's go ahead and write some code. Uh, Most people coming into this class have absolutely no idea what Node is. And so my goal with this video is to not really cover too much in lesson 1 other than right here, building the API with Node.js. Because that's where people are getting hung up. When they look at this personal assignment, they're like, I don't know how to create a web server. I don't know how to, do all of this. Okay. So let's just go ahead and run through some of this stuff. I just opened up a new window in VS Code with a brand new empty folder that I have not done anything for. Okay, what I'm gonna do is, actually, let's just go to one of these things. I'm just gonna click on this first link in here, Node and Express tutorial. This came up in a Google search. I think I said like Node Express easy tutorial. And it was the second one that came up. So it kind of goes through what Node is. It talks about how you have to install Node on your system. It's worth noting that Mac users will have to right click and say open when they open the installer. Otherwise, Mac security protocols will try to block it. And then it says Express is a web framework for Node.js. Using Express can build web applications and a bunch of stuff. First, create a new folder and initialize it with a blank package.json file using the command below. So if I run that command, I say npm init, which by the way will not work if you don't have Node installed. So let me first check to make sure that I have Node installed. And I'll just type in node -- version. I have Node installed. And I can double check for npm as well, just to make sure that I can run an npm command from here. And I'm just going to run npm init --y. Now, this --y will bypass a CLI that allows me to configure a bunch of things for my package.json. And it will just create one for me with all of these default values. Now, I can go in here and I can change any of this. That's totally fine. In fact, one thing that I'm going to change, I'm going to add a start script so that we can, so that we can very easily go in here and just say npm start. Now, in the folder of this project, I can run npm test or npm start. I can add any script here that I want to. I could say npm add commit and push to GitHub as the name. I don't know if it'll like that name actually. Let's try, I'll just say git update. Or like that, git update. And like GitHub Copilot's like, hey, do you want to do this? And that's basically what I was thinking for this command. But I can add any command that I want to here. And then right over here, I could run npm git update. And then it would run this. Okay, pretty slick. I'm not going to add that right now. I'm not too worried about that, but I do want this one. Okay. Now, this is saying I need a server.js file. I'm going to rename this to server. This should match this. And then I need a file over here that's called server.js, okay? Because when I run npm start, it's going to try to run, and this node is like the same thing as me saying Python before a file name in Python to run a Python file. It's going to run this server.js file, and this is where I'm going to make the code for my web server, okay? So let's go back to that tutorial on here. It says install the Express framework. All right, so I can install a new package here by saying npm install, and then I put the package name. And then if I put -- save for that package name, then it'll add it to my dependencies here in my package.json, which is really nice. It's worth noting that Node modules will never get pushed up to version control. So I'm going to put a git ignore in here, and I'm going to put Node modules. The reason why, Node modules is going to be really, really big, okay? And we never want that being pushed up to version control. But if somebody wanted to use this project, all they have to do is when they clone it or fork it or download it, they just have to say npm install, which will install all of the dependencies found in the package.json, creating their node modules on their local computers, and then npm start to run it, which is super nice. Okay. All right, so I've installed one dependency. I have a git ignore. My repository is not a Git repository, so I'm going to go over here and say initialize repository. And now we should see this being grayed out. That looks beautiful. Okay, let's go back to this tutorial. Upon execution of this command, you will have the Express framework installed in your project. Let's create a sample code to test out our Express framework. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I'm just going to test something. I'm just playing around with GitHub Copilot today. Oops. Express web server. Well, it's doing a bunch of stuff that I don't need. That's okay. I am going to copy this though. I love how simple this is. I'm just going to paste that. Okay, let's walk through just a little bit of what this is doing. So requiring Express, that's just importing the package that was installed in our node modules. And then I can use it and then create an app that has all of the functionality of the Express package, which is super nice. They have functions like get and listen and post and put and delete and everything that we'll need for a typical RESTful API. Okay, so this says if I hit the home page of my app, then I'll send hello. We're going to be listening on port 3000. This right here just says if there is an environment variable called port, then we'll use that. So when we deploy to render, they will have that environment variable and they won't use port 3000. The only thing I'm going to change is I don't like the code duplication here for port 3000. And so I'm just going to say that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to save this and then I'm just going to run npm start. And it says web server is listening at port 3000. I'm going to open up my browser and say localhost 3000, and I get this hello. Pretty nice. Okay. Now, if I wanted to change this to the name of somebody I know and save it, this does not automatically refresh my server. So I'm going to have us install one more package. I'm going to say, let me just split that. I'm going to say npm install nodemon, and then I'll say -- save -dev. Now, what this does, I'm going to open this up so you can see it. It will save the nodemon package in my dependencies, but in my dev dependencies. Dev dependencies are ones that are nice for development, but I don't need for my project to actually run when it's on a server. Okay, so nodemon, I don't need to have it automatically refresh on a server, but I do need Express for my code to actually work on the server. Nodemon will just be nice for me. Okay, and then I'll just change my start script to say nodemon server.js. I'm going to save this and I'm going to stop this and say npm start. You can see it's running that nodemon command, and now it says watching for changes in these files, and then my code web server is listening at port. Okay, and so I'm just going to say Hannah Birch, and you can see it refresh there. Let's look at our browser. Hit refresh. It says Hannah Birch, and then I'll change it to another one. I'll say Emily Birch, and hit refresh, and you can see it says Emily Birch. Okay, so it's refreshing nicely, and that's pretty much that's all the code that we technically need for our first assignment. Now, if you look at the code solution for this week, I did do more. Okay, I moved the route outside of this file into a different file to just clean up my server file to keep this extremely lean. I'm pretty sure I put this, what we call an anonymous function, I'm pretty sure I put that into a controller folder to have all of my logic, all of these functions in the same place. Because these functions will get really big. If right here, if I have to make a bunch of database calls and filter through the data and build a new object to send back to the user, it could take a lot of code to write that. And so we usually separate those out, even though technically I could have everything I want in one file in a node project. But you'll rarely see that. So, okay, next up, I'm going to push to a repository. I'll say adding lesson 1 assignment code, and I'll say commit. And I don't think this published, well, maybe it'll work. Oh yeah, that'll work. I'll say public repository, CSE 341 Spring 23. I'm gonna say open on GitHub. And that looks beautiful. Okay, awesome. Next up, I'm going to go to render.com. Okay, I just signed in. Here's what I see. These are a bunch of projects that I have up right now. I'm just gonna say new web service. And I already authenticated my GitHub account in here so it can see all of my repositories. I'll say create that. And then name, I'm just gonna say CSC 341 Spring 23. Nice and original. I think my branch is the master branch. Let me just double check. Yep, it is. So I'll leave that the way it is. Let's see here. Node is our runtime. Build command, I'm gonna say npm install. And node server.js should be great. I could say npm start, except I put nodemon in here, and nodemon does not play well with deployment platforms. So I am just gonna say node server.js. I could also make another script in here if I wanted to. I could say like deploy, well, start prod or like production. And then I'd say that, okay? And so if I did that, then I could just say npm start prod, okay? But I'm not gonna add that right now because I have to push again, and I'll just say, well, let me look at that real fast. We don't need any of this right now. We will do environment variable stuff next week. I'm gonna say create web service. Okay, and we'll give this a sec. I'm gonna go ahead and pause this video. All right, that was about 2 minutes, and it says it is using port 3000, and it ran that. Here's my URL. I'm just gonna open it and see if we see a name on here. Nope, not quite ready. Okay, we'll give that another minute, and let's see if that shows up. It should just see that name right there. So we'll go ahead and wait a sec. While we're waiting though, let me just talk through something real quick. There's a lot here, and if you're struggling to understand any of this, it's okay. So we talked about these first 2 lines of code. We talked about a couple of these last lines of code. This right here is specifying if I have an HTTP GET request at this URL, then run this function, do this code. Okay, so I could add another one of these, and I could say Hannah right here, and then right here I'm just going to change that and say Hannah. Okay, and it says it's listening on port 3000. So I'm going to go over here and I'll say localhost 3000. Okay, it says Emily, but then if I use the route Hannah, I should see Hannah right there. Okay, so I can have as many routes as I want in my application, and as many as our front end would potentially need. Okay, now using the browser, I can test GET requests. If there isn't like any authentication requirements, I can test a simple GET request like this. If I need to test anything else though, I like to use an extension called, well, I was gonna say REST client, but there is another one in here called Thunder client, which is actually really nice. So Thunder client is, both of them are ways to submit HTTP requests without writing a bunch of code to do it. So right here I just said new request, and GET, I'm just gonna put our URL for our local host. We said 3000, and then I'm gonna say Hannah. I wanna send that GET request, and I don't have to worry about any of this stuff right now. I'm just gonna hit send, boom. We got a nice request there, okay? And it came back. If I say Emily, okay? So this is working. I can look at our first week's worth of assignment stuff in the browser, but for the rest of the semester, the browser isn't really gonna cut it for some of the requests for most of the requests that we're going to be sending. And so you can use a package like Thunder client. REST client is also very, very similar. But yeah, this is just a VS Code extension. If you are on YouTube looking at some API stuff, you'll probably see Postman, a lot of references to Postman, and Postman is great too. So just keep that in mind. Lastly, let me just show you one quick example of how to get this code somewhere else. So let's say I'm just gonna make a folder. I'm gonna call it controllers, and controllers is just a fancy way to say this is where my logic will take place. Okay, and I'm gonna make a new file. I'm gonna call this lesson1.js. And basically what I want to do is take this anonymous function and give it a name and put it in another place. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that for now, and I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say export. I'm going to say, well, actually, let me just declare the function first. I'll say const Emily route equals, and then I have my function. And then down here, actually, yeah, that looks great. Okay, let me just close that. I'll save all that. And then we're going to just go ahead and export both of these. All right, so I made my functions for these for my lesson 1 routes in here. And notice these look exactly like the code that is found for these. I have my route specified for both, and then I have my anonymous function, or sorry, I don't have my route specified, but I have my anonymous function listed somewhere else. Okay, with these being exported, all I have to do in here is just import them. And so I'm going to say const lesson1 controller equals, and then we go relative path inside of our current folder into the controllers folder, and then we called it just lesson1. You don't have to include JS, it'll know that you're using JS. Okay, and then right here, instead of this anonymous function, I can just take that out and put lesson1 controller dot Emily route. Okay, because I have this Emily route function, it exports, gets imported here, and then I have lesson1 controller Emily route, and then I'll do the same thing right here. Instead of this function, I'll have lesson1 controller Hannah route. Okay, now this is super nice because it really cleans up my code in here for my server file. Now let's just check. I'm just going to save this. I don't see any errors in here, but I want to make sure that this is still running. So I'm going to come over to the Thunder client, and I have my request from a minute ago. I'll say send. Emily Birch pops up. Let's try another one. I'll say Hannah. Send. Hannah pops up. That's awesome. Okay, that's great. Let's go check our browser to see if this is working. Beautiful. Emily's right there. And our Hannah, oh, oops. Did we not put our Hannah route in there? I totally thought we did. Let me look at server.js, and Hannah is not there. Okay, that's okay. But our code is working on render. It is worth noting, a lot of people, probably the majority of students, will see this error cannot get, and then whatever route there is. And if I didn't have anything specified at just that / alone, then this wouldn't work either. This is working only because in here I have this route to right there. So, okay, well, while I have y'all here, let me just show you one other trick. Because as a website gets bigger, I will get more and more routes. I'll end up with potentially hundreds of routes, and I don't want them in my server file. I want my server file as clean as possible. I want it to show that I'm listening on a port, maybe have some database connection stuff just to kick off my app, and really that's it. So what I'm going to do, I'm also going to create a routes folder, and I'm going to say new file, and I'll say lesson1.js. Okay, by the way, none of the stuff you have to do for this first assignment. Okay, there might be stuff in the rubric about getting extra points for them, but this is kind of how you want to like set up your applications for this class and for any Node.js development that you ever do. And really, I'm just doing this because I enjoy coding and I'm having fun with this video, so I'm just going to throw this in here. All right, so we have lesson1.js. In here, we are going to need to basically do what we're doing here, where we say app.get, app.get. Really, all of this, our goal is to move into here. And then we just need a way to export this and then use it in our server file. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here, and actually I'm going to rename this to just be index, because we'll probably add more to this outside of lesson 1. Okay, but this will be like where all of our routes for everything will be. Okay, so right here I'm importing my controller, which is great. And then I am going to say, actually at the very top, I'm going to say const routes equals. And then we're going to use this Express router. This is probably arguably my favorite thing that Express offers out of the box is this router. Okay, import my controllers, that's great. And then right here, instead of saying app.get, I have my routes. And so I can say routes.get, and I'll do the same thing. I'll say where I want this URL, where I want this one, what I want to do when that URL is hit. And then I just have to export this. And I'm going to say module.exports equals routes. Okay. Then in my server file, I just need to use these routes. And so right here, we can leave port above it. I'm just going to say app.use, and I should probably import it, but that's okay. And then I'll just say require routes. I can leave index here. That would work out great. I can also take it off just because the way JavaScript works, it'll find index by default. Okay. And it crashed. As I say, it'll find it by default. Let's see why it crashed. Cannot find module controllers, lesson 1. Our path in here doesn't match up. We have to go out of our routes folder and then into our controllers folder. So that should fix it for us. You can see it's finding it now. Whoops. Okay, but if it wasn't clear to see, then I could say / and it'll show me what's here. I can say .. If GitHub Copilot doesn't get in the way. It is getting in the way. That's okay. I'll say controllers, and I'm just looking on the side over here to see what it is. And I'll say lesson 1. Okay, save that, and it's listening. No more errors. That's fantastic. Okay, so you can see what we've done here. We've separated our application. When we started, we had it all right here, and then we moved our business logic into our controllers file, and then we moved our routes into our routes file. Okay, so we're just kind of separating things out, leaving this at less than 10 lines of code, which is awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our Thunder client, and let's make sure this is working. So we have our HANA route, we'll say send, and it works. And we'll say send on that one, and it works out great. Okay, so I am going to just change up our routes one last time here. And I'm going to add one for my wife. We'll say Sarah route, Sarah. And then I'll go into my routes here. And I'm going to leave this one as Emily. And then I'll have a Sarah route. Make sure I'm exporting it. And save that. Save everything. So now my home page should have Sarah coming up. Good. And then I have an Emily route that I just made. Good. And a Hannah route that we already had. Beautiful. Okay, now that's all tested, I'm going to come over here. And I'm going to say going above and beyond for 100% on first assignment. That is okay. The happy face is worth it. I'm just going to say commit and sync. Okay, and wow, I didn't even realize we made changes here. Oh, we had the start prod. Cool. So I'm going to go over to render, and I'll say settings, and I'm just going to change this start script to be npm start prod, because we have that there. Now, if I ever wanted to change it, I could easily change it in my project. And if I had multiple deployment locations or anything, I wouldn't have to worry about each one. I just have this command, I change it one place, and we're good to go. Okay, if I go to events, it's probably going to be, it canceled this one. It automatically kicked off one for my commit, and then it started another one manually just now when I changed that start script. All right, I'm just going to click on this link right here, and we should see a nice log of everything that's going on. I am also going to just look at GitHub just to see how this looks now that we have another commit. That all looks beautiful. Okay. And the reason why I say going above and beyond for 100%, if I look at that rubric for the first assignment down here, this 90% mark says meets developing criteria. To get 100%, you have to kind of go above and beyond. So this shows data of someone you know on the home page, which we got. meets proficient criteria plus application display name when home route is requested. That was for Sarah. Has a folder called controllers, which we have, and then video is less than 1 minute. That one I'm failing on if this was my demo video, which it's not, so we're good. All right, let's come back over to render. And yes, I meant to start that. It failed. Why did it fail? Starting service with node or with npm start prod, where command is one of these. Interesting. It did not like having me run that npm command. Huh. Well, wait, what was that just doing? For now then, I'll go ahead, I'm just gonna leave it the way it was because it wasn't broken. I'm just gonna say node server.js and save changes. And that'll probably kick off another build, yep. And we can watch that here as well. And I'm gonna go ahead and pause this and I'll resume the video once it's done. All right, that was probably about another 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and test it to see if it's working. Okay, we have Sarah Birch at the home page, and then we had an Emily route, and we had a Hannah route. Beautiful. It's also worth noting that I can also test that exact same thing over here in Thunder Client. I can say new request, put that in here, and send it, and it works out great. Notice it does take longer. That took 256 milliseconds, and if I run this one locally, it was 3 milliseconds, so kind of interesting. Okay, well, you guys, I will finish up my rantings for today, but I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.